Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the United Earth Fleet vessel Defiance, his eyes fixed on the main screen. The massive alien ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system just 3 days ago. They were unlike anything humans had ever seen before, their hulls dark and angular, covered with what looked like bony protrusions. "Sir, they're hailing us again," said Communications Officer Diane Foster, her voice steady despite the tension that filled the command deck. Miller nodded. "Put them through." The screen flickered, revealing the face of a being that still shocked Miller despite this being their third communication. The Zorlaxian had gray-blue skin stretched tight over a skull-like face. 4 yellow eyes blinked independently of each other. Human vessel. The alien spoke in surprisingly good English, its translation systems having quickly mastered Earth's languages. "I am Fleet Commander Vexitar of the Zorlaxian Empire. Your delay in accepting our terms is unacceptable. You will surrender your planet and all colonies immediately." Miller maintained his composure. "Commander Vexitar, as I've explained, I don't have the authority to surrender Earth. Our ambassador is en route to discuss peaceful alternatives." The alien's upper eyes narrowed. "There are no alternatives. Surrender is the only option that prevents your extinction. The Zorlaxian Empire has conquered 17 systems. Your resistance is both futile and illogical." The communication ended abruptly. Miller sighed and turned to his executive officer, Karen Phillips. "They're not big on diplomacy, are they?" he said. "No, sir," Phillips replied. "And the scans confirm what we feared. Their technology is at least 70 years ahead of ours. Their weapon systems alone could—" "I know," Miller cut her off. "Let's just hope Ambassador Wright can buy us some time." Susan Wright had spent her entire career in diplomacy, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. She sat across from Fleet Commander Vexitar in the neutral meeting location they had agreed upon, a small space station positioned between Earth and Mars. "Ambassador Wright," Vexitar said, "your species' insistence on these talks puzzles me. The outcome is predetermined. The Zorlaxian Empire requires your resources. Your surrender would save billions of lives." Wright leaned forward. "Commander, humanity has a long history of forming mutually beneficial relationships. We're willing to share resources, establish trade." "Share?" Vexitar made a sound that might have been laughter. "The strong do not share with the weak. This is the natural order. With respect, Commander, that's not our way. Humans value their freedom above all else. We won't surrender it without a fight regardless of the odds." Vexitar's 4 eyes blinked in different patterns. "Fascinating. Every other species we've encountered made the logical choice to surrender when faced with superior force." "Then you've never encountered humans before," Wright said with a small smile. On Mars Colony, 8-year-old Peter Garcia looked up at the strange lights in the sky. His father, Chief Engineer Alex Garcia, pulled him away from the window. "Come on, buddy, we need to get to the shelter," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "But Dad, what are those ships? They look cool." Alex didn't answer, just held his son's hand tighter as they hurried through the corridors of Olympus City, Mars' largest settlement. Around them, other colonists rushed toward the underground shelters, some crying, others in stunned silence. The colony's governor, Ben Wallace, was broadcasting over the emergency system. "All citizens proceed calmly to designated shelters. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not—" The message cut off as the first Zorlaxian weapon struck the colony's communications array. The lights flickered, and then the artificial gravity wavered. "Dad, I'm scared," Peter whispered. "It's okay," Alex said, picking up his son. "I won't let anything happen to you." That was when the main dome cracked. In Geneva, the United Earth Council met in emergency session. The screen showed the destruction of Mars Colony, a surprise attack launched by the Zorlaxians while Ambassador Wright was still in negotiations. 20,000 dead, Defense Minister Richard Owen reported, his face ashen. The colony's main life support systems are destroyed. The survivors are holed up in emergency bunkers, but they have air for only 3 days. Council President Maria Rivera closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were hard with resolve. Then we have no choice. As of this moment, Earth is at war with the Zorlaxian Empire. Aboard his flagship, Vextar received the news of Earth's declaration of war with surprise. They choose to fight? After witnessing what happened to their Mars outpost, he asked his second-in-command, Officer Grell. Yes, Commander. They have mobilized their fleet and are arming civilian vessels. How curious. Vextar mused. Send the report to High Command. Inform them that subjugation of this species may take longer than anticipated. Grell hesitated. Sir, our intelligence has uncovered something unusual about these humans. They have a history of continuing to fight even after military defeat. Impossible. No rational species would continue fighting when defeat is certain. Nevertheless, sir, it appears to be a cultural trait. They have numerous historical examples of fighting against overwhelming odds. Vextar dismissed this with a wave. Then they are simply irrational. Once they experience true defeat, they will submit like all others. 1 month later, Captain Miller stood on the bridge of the Defiance once more, now part of Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet. Beside him, Lieutenant Linda Ortiz monitored the approaching Zorlaxian warships. They've broken through the outer perimeter, she reported. Jupiter's moons have fallen. Saturn outpost is dark. Miller nodded grimly. All ships take defensive positions. Remember, people, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone back home, for every human colony, for our very way of life. Around him, the bridge crew straightened in their seats. The odds were impossible, the enemy vastly superior. But none of them considered surrender. As the first shots flashed across the void of space, Miller remembered Ambassador Wright's words from her final broadcast before the negotiations collapsed. We've informed the Zorlaxians that humans don't surrender. Soon, they'll understand what that really means. The battle for Earth had begun, and though none of them knew it yet, it would teach the Zorlaxian Empire a lesson they would never forget, that the true strength of humanity wasn't in its weapons or technology, but in its unbreakable spirit and refusal to bow to tyranny no matter the cost. 6 months had passed since the Zorlaxians first appeared in Earth's solar system. 6 months of desperate battles, of retreats, of watching humanity's outer defenses crumble one by one. The orbital stations had fallen. The moon was now under alien control. And Earth itself was surrounded by the dark, angular ships of the Zorlaxian fleet. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez stood at the viewport of Luna Base, the last human stronghold on the moon. She watched as another wave of enemy fighters approached. Behind her, the remaining 53 defenders prepared their weapons. How long until they reach us, she asked. Sergeant Paul Green checked his tactical display. 15 minutes, Lieutenant, maybe less. Rodriguez nodded. Send the message to Earth. Tell them we'll hold as long as we can. Green hesitated. Do you think anyone's still listening? Someone's always listening, she said firmly. Now send it. As Green transmitted their final message, Rodriguez addressed her troops. They were a mix of military personnel and civilian volunteers, their faces dirty and tired from weeks of fighting without rest. I won't lie to you, she said. We probably won't see another sunrise. But every minute we keep the Zorlaxians busy here is another minute Earth has to prepare. Remember your training. Remember why we fight. A young private named Sam Wilson raised his hand. Lieutenant, what exactly are we fighting for? They've already won. The room fell silent. Rodriguez looked at him with steady eyes. No, Wilson. They've taken territory, but they haven't won. As long as one human continues to resist, they haven't won. On Earth, Major Frank Bell crouched in the ruins of what had once been downtown Chicago. The city had been one of the first targets when the Zorlaxian ground troops landed 3 weeks ago. Now it was a battleground of shattered buildings and burning streets. Bell signaled to the 12 men and women hidden with him among the rubble. They were a mix of military survivors and civilians who had taken up arms. Some had been accountants, teachers, or store clerks before the invasion. Now they were soldiers. The patrol is coming down 5th Street, he whispered. Remember the plan. Let the first 3 pass, then hit the middle. Jackie, you're on the launcher. Jackie Lee nodded. Before the invasion, she had been a college student studying literature. Now she held a salvaged missile launcher that had been modified to penetrate Zorlaxian armor. The alien patrol came into view. 6 soldiers in powered exoskeletons that made them tower over any human. Their weapons were slung casually, their posture relaxed. After 3 weeks of easy victories, they had grown confident, careless. Bell waited until the moment was right, then gave the signal. Jackie fired. The missile struck the middle soldier directly in the chest, sending its armored body flying backward. Before the others could react, Bell's team opened fire from multiple positions. In less than 30 seconds, all 6 Zorlaxians lay dead or dying. "Move," Bell ordered. "They'll have reinforcements here in minutes." As they gathered weapons and ammunition from the fallen aliens, Bell noticed Jackie staring at one of the Zorlaxian bodies. "First time seeing one up close?" he asked. She nodded. I expected them to be more different. They have 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. They're not so alien after all." "Remember that," Bell said. "They bleed just like us. That means they can die just like us." General Krell, commander of the Zorlaxian ground forces, slammed his fist onto the holographic display table. Another patrol lost. Another supply depot sabotaged. Another communication relay destroyed. "This is unacceptable," he roared. "We control their major cities. Their governments have fallen. Their militaries are scattered. Why do they continue to fight?" Officer Mexival, his chief of intelligence, replied cautiously. "Sir, our psychological analysis of the humans suggests they have a deep cultural resistance to occupation. They simply refuse to accept defeat. Every species accepts defeat when the alternative is extinction," Krell growled. "The humans appear to be different, sir. We've studied their historical records. They have numerous examples of continuing resistance even after conventional military defeat." Krell's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of his irritation. "Then we will have to teach them the true meaning of defeat. Double the patrols. Institute a curfew. Any human found resisting will be executed publicly." "Sir, our data suggests such measures may actually increase resistance." "Your data is flawed. No rational species would invite their own destruction." The United Earth Council had retreated to a hardened bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Of the original 30 council members, only 11 remained. President Maria Rivera looked at the faces around the table, tired but determined. "The Zorlaxians have announced new measures," she said. "Curfews, public executions, they're growing desperate." Defense Minister Owen nodded. "Luna Base fell this morning. Lieutenant Rodriguez and her people fought to the last, but they took down 3 enemy cruisers in the process." A moment of silence fell over the group. "What's the status of the resistance?" asked Counselor Helen Jones. "Better than we could have hoped," Owen replied. "We have active cells in every occupied city. Major Bell's group in Chicago, Captain Garcia's Marines in what's left of New York, the civilian network led by the Martian survivors in Los Angeles." "And Project Phoenix?" Rivera asked. Dr. Alan Patel, who had been silent until now, looked up from his tablet. "We're making progress. Dr. Daniels and her team have successfully reverse-engineered some of the Zorlaxian shield technology. If we can adapt it to our remaining ships..." "How long?" Rivera asked. 3 months, maybe 4. Rivera nodded. "Then we need to hold out for 4 more months. Make sure every resistance cell knows. They just need to keep fighting a little longer." In his private quarters, Fleet Commander Vextar reviewed the latest casualty reports. The numbers troubled him deeply. The Zorlaxian Empire had conquered 17 solar systems before Earth. None had cost them so many lives. None had dragged on for so long after the primary military forces were defeated. His communication panel chimed. It was a direct transmission from the Imperial throne. "Supreme Leader," Vextar said, bowing his head as the image formed. "Commander Vextar," the ancient Zorlaxian ruler rasped. "I am displeased with the reports from Earth. 6 months and still the planet is not pacified? The humans are unusually stubborn, Supreme Leader. They refuse to acknowledge defeat." "Then perhaps they have not been truly defeated," the Supreme Leader said coldly. "I am sending 3 more battle fleets to your position. End this resistance, Commander, or I will find someone who can. The transmission ended, leaving Vextar alone with his thoughts. He turned back to the viewport, looking down at the blue-green planet below. Such a small world to cause so much trouble. What is it about you humans? He murmured. Why won't you surrender? He didn't expect an answer. But somewhere on the planet below, millions of humans were fighting on, in the ruins of their cities, in hidden bases, in makeshift laboratories where they worked to turn the enemy's technology against them, and not one of them was thinking about surrender. 1 year had passed since Earth officially fell to the Zorlaxian Empire. The planet's surface bore the scars of war, shattered cities, burned forests, and vast areas where nothing grew. His Zorlaxian bases dotted the landscape, their angular architecture standing out against Earth's natural curves. Yet despite their apparent victory, the aliens found themselves in a war that refused to end. Dr. Lisa Daniels wiped sweat from her forehead as she carefully connected the final wire in the device before her. The underground lab hidden in the Rocky Mountains was hot and poorly ventilated, but it was safe from Zorlaxian scanners thanks to the natural mineral deposits in the surrounding. Brock, is it ready? Asked Carlos Reyes, her assistant and one of the few surviving engineers from NASA. Lisa nodded. If my calculations are correct, this should disable their shield generators for approximately 3 minutes. 3 minutes doesn't sound like much, Carlos said with a frown. 3 minutes is enough time for our fighters to hit them where it hurts, Lisa replied. She carefully placed the device in a protective case. Get this to Major Bell's team. They're planning a raid on the Chicago Command Center in 2 days. Carlos took the case. You know, a year ago I was designing climate satellites. Now I'm building weapons from alien tech. Lisa placed a hand on his shoulder. We all do what we must to survive, and someday, to win. Commander Eric Patel stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, a modified Earth cargo ship hidden in the asteroid belt. Through careful maneuvering and improvised stealth technology, they had managed to avoid detection by Zorlaxian patrols for 8 months. Target acquired, said Julia Kim, his weapons officer. Zorlaxian supply ship at 10 o'clock. They don't see us yet. Patel nodded. Bring us in slow. Wait until we're in optimal firing range. The Vengeance crept forward, using the asteroids for cover. It was a dangerous game. One wrong move could send them crashing into space rocks or expose them to enemy sensors. In range, Julia reported. Fire, Patel ordered. The makeshift missiles, modified mining charges, streaked toward the unsuspecting alien vessel. They struck with precision, tearing open the hull and sending the ship spinning out of control. Move in and prepare boarding teams, Patel said. We need those supplies. As his crew rushed to prepare, Patel gazed at the damaged Zorlaxian ship. It was their 3rd successful attack this month. Small victories in a war they were still losing, but victories nonetheless. In a secure Zorlaxian research facility built on what was once Buenos Aires, Dr. Zinvex studied the brain scans of human prisoners. Unlike most of his species, Zinvex was interested in understanding the humans, not just conquering them. Fascinating, he murmured. Even after a year of occupation, they show no signs of accepting their situation. His assistant, lab technician Grell, looked up from her workstation. The latest psychological evaluations show increased resistance tendencies, not decreased as expected. Counter to every model we have, Zinvex agreed. Every other species we've encountered eventually accepted their place in the Empire. The crawl took 6 weeks. The Vosians took 4 months. But humans... He turned to the extensive library of Earth books, videos, and historical records they had collected. There's something in their history. Something that makes them different. Zinvex pulled up footage from human wars throughout their history, from ancient battles with primitive weapons to their more recent conflicts. In each he saw the same pattern. Humans fighting on against overwhelming odds, refusing to submit even when defeat seemed certain. I need to bring these findings to General Krall, he said. The humans will never surrender as we expect. We need a different approach. General Krall was not in a mood to listen to theories. A new wave of attacks had struck Zorlaxian positions worldwide. A weapons depot in former Russia had been destroyed. A communication hub in Australia had been sabotaged, and 3 more patrols had vanished in the ruins of Chicago. More executions, he roared at his officers. Find their families, make examples of them. Sir, one brave officer named Krelvon ventured, we've tried that approach. It only seems to strengthen their resolve. Impossible. No rational being would continue to resist when their loved ones are threatened. Dr. Zinvex entered the command center and heard the general's outburst. That's because you're applying Zorlaxian logic to human behavior, General. Krell turned his 4 eyes toward the scientist. Explain yourself. I've been studying their history and psychology, Zinvex said. Humans place an unusually high value on what they call freedom. When threatened, especially when their families are threatened, they don't surrender. They fight harder. Ridiculous, Krell scoffed. Freedom is an abstract concept. Survival is concrete. Not to humans, Zinvex insisted. Throughout their history, they have chosen to risk death rather than live under rule they consider unjust. Their literature, their music, their art, all celebrate resistance against overwhelming odds. Krell waved a dismissive hand. Your theories do not change my orders. Increase the patrols, double the executions. As Zinvex left the command center, Officer Krelvon followed him. Doctor, Krelvon said quietly, I would like to hear more about your research. Some of us question the wisdom of our current approach. Zinvex looked at the young officer with surprise. Be careful, officer. Such talk borders on sedition. Perhaps, Krelvon admitted. But I've been on this planet for a year now. I've fought the humans. I've seen them die rather than surrender. And I've begun to wonder, what if they're right? Lieutenant Nicole Garcia led her small team through the sewers beneath the Zorlaxian research facility. The stench was overwhelming, but it kept them beneath the alien sensors. Almost there, she whispered to the 5 soldiers following her. Remember, our priority is the data. Dr. Daniels needs to know what they've learned about us. They reached an access point directly beneath the facility. Using tools reverse-engineered from Zorlaxian technology, they cut through the floor and emerged in a maintenance corridor. Security systems bypassed, whispered Alan West, their tech specialist. We have 10 minutes before the next patrol. Nicole nodded and led them toward the research wing. They moved silently, their weapons ready. They had all lost family and friends to the invasion. They had all seen their world burned and broken, but none of them had lost hope. They reached Dr. Zinvex's laboratory undetected. While the others stood guard, Alan downloaded the alien research data. Got it, he said after a tense minute. Everything they know about human psychology, resistance patterns, and... Wait. What is it? Nicole asked. According to this, some of the Zorlaxians are starting to question their mission here. There's a growing faction that believes conquering Earth was a mistake. Nicole's eyes widened. That's the first good news I've heard in months. Let's get this back to headquarters. As they retreated the way they had come, Nicole allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps the tide was finally beginning to turn. Not because humans had developed better weapons or won major battles, but because their unbreakable spirit was starting to affect the enemy itself. The war was far from over, but for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope that humans might not just survive. They might actually win. 2 years had passed since the Zorlaxian invasion began. What the aliens had expected to be a quick conquest had turned into a grinding war of attrition. Though they controlled most major cities, the human resistance grew stronger each day. And so, the ruins of London, Senior Commander Vexnar, nephew of Fleet Commander Vextar, sat in what had once been the British Museum. Around him, artifacts from human history were carefully arranged. He had been studying them for months. Commander, you requested these? Asked his aide, bringing in more books. Yes, Vexnar replied, taking the stack. Their military histories, especially. The aide glanced at the titles. The Battle of Thermopylae, the American Revolution. What value do these primitive accounts have? Knowledge of our enemy. Vexnar said simply. Look at this. He showed the aide an ancient Greek vase, depicting Spartan warriors. 300 soldiers stood against an army of thousands. They knew they would die. Yet they fought anyway. Irrational, the aide commented. Perhaps. Or perhaps there is a wisdom here we do not understand. Vexnar opened another book. And here, outnumbered farmers and merchants fought against the British Empire, the most powerful military force of their time. Vexnar's 4 eyes blinked thoughtfully. In all these accounts, I see the same pattern. Humans choose death over submission when they believe their cause is just. A weakness we should exploit, the aide suggested. No, Vexnar said. A strength we have underestimated. Captain Steve Winters led his team through the night toward the Zorlaxian communications hub in former Denver. The 20 men and women moved silently, their faces blackened with mud, their weapons ready. Radio check, Steve whispered. Alpha team in position, came the response from Linda Hayes, his second in command. Beta team ready, reported Kevin Jones from the other side of the facility. Steve checked his watch. The device Dr. Daniels had created would disable the alien shields for exactly 3 minutes. They needed to make every second count. On my mark, he said. 3, 2, 1, mark. Linda activated the device. The faint blue glow surrounding the communications hub flickered and died. Go, 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 Steve ordered. His team rushed forward. The Zorlaxian guards, suddenly vulnerable, fell quickly to the humans' weapons. Steve led the way inside, where more aliens scrambled to respond to the unexpected attack. The fighting was brief but intense. 7 humans fell, but within 2 minutes, they had secured the main control room. Plant the charges, Steve ordered, and download their transmission logs. We need to know what they're saying to their homeworld. Kevin worked quickly at the alien console, plugging in a device designed by their technical team. Got it. Full transmission history for the past month. Time? Steve asked. 30 seconds until shields reactivate. Move out. They retreated as quickly as they had come, just as the shields hummed back to life. From a safe distance, Steve triggered the explosives. The night sky lit up as the communications hub erupted. In flames. Send the message, he told Linda. Let everyone know we hit them where it hurts. Linda activated their emergency broadcast system, sending a signal that would reach resistance cells across North America. The eyes are blind. Repeat, the eyes are blind. For the first time in months, the Zorlaxians would be unable to coordinate their forces across the continent. Dr. Zinvek stood before the Zorlaxian High Command, projected as a hologram from Earth to their homeworld millions of miles away. Behind him, data scrolled showing the increasing cost of the Earth occupation. In summary, he concluded, humans are the only species we have encountered that values freedom above survival itself. Their resistance will not diminish with time, it will only grow stronger. High Commander Rezkor, leader of the Zorlaxian military, leaned forward. What you describe defies logic, Doctor. All beings seek to preserve their lives. Humans operate on a different logic, Zinvex explained. They believe some things are worth dying for, and they teach this belief to each generation. He displayed footage of human children in underground schools, learning their history, singing songs about freedom and resistance. Even their young are being raised to continue this fight indefinitely, Zinvex said. And our casualties continue to mount. We have lost more soldiers on Earth than in our last 5 conquests combined. The High Command members exchanged troubled glances. What do you propose, Doctor? Asked Rezakor. A re-evaluation of our approach. Perhaps Earth cannot be held through force alone. Officer Krelvon walked through a human prisoner camp outside the ruins of Sydney. What had begun as his private doubts had grown into a movement within the Zorlaxian forces. Many young officers had begun to question the Empire's methods after facing human resistance. A human child, no more than 6 years old, looked up at him without fear as he passed. This struck Krelvon. Children of other conquered species cowered in terror at the sight of Zorlaxian soldiers. Why aren't you afraid? He asked, stopping. The child shrugged. My mom says you can only kill us. You can't make us obey. Krelvan was still pondering this when alarms blared throughout the camp. The Resistance had attacked another patrol nearby. His superior officer, Captain Dren, stormed past. Lock down the camp, execute 10 prisoners as punishment. Krelvan blocked his path. No. What did you say? Dren's 4 eyes widened in shock. I said no. These executions do not work. They only strengthen human resolve. This is treason. Dren reached for his weapon. Krelvan was faster. With a swift movement, he disabled the captain. Around him, other like-minded officers moved to secure the command center. Send the message, he told his allies. It's time. Across Earth, in dozens of Zorlaxian bases, similar scenes played out as younger officers who had spent 2 years studying humanity rose up against commanders who insisted on continuing the failed strategies of brutality and fear. General Kral received the reports of mutiny with cold fury. Traitors, all of them. Fleet Commander Vextar stood calmly before him. They are not traitors to the Empire, General. They simply recognize what you refuse to see. This war cannot be won through our traditional methods. So we should just surrender to these primitives? Kral snarled. No, we should acknowledge reality. Earth has cost us more than it can ever repay. Our home world is questioning the wisdom of continuing this occupation. And now our own troops are in revolt. Vextar's 4 eyes fixed steadily on Kral. The Supreme Leader has ordered a strategic reassessment. I am here to relieve you of command. Kral's hand moved toward his weapon, then stopped. Even he could not defy a direct order from the Supreme Leader. The humans have infected you all with their madness, he said bitterly. Perhaps, Vextar agreed. Or perhaps they have taught us something our empire has forgotten, that true strength comes not from forcing others to submit, but from standing firm for what you believe, no matter the cost. As Kral was led away, Vextar looked out at the human city his forces had reduced to rubble. Somehow, among those ruins, life continued. Resistance continued. Hope continued. For the first time, he understood why humans never surrendered. And he wondered what it would mean for the Zorlaxian Empire to face an enemy that could not be conquered. 3 years after the Zorlaxian invasion began, the war reached its turning point. The once unified alien force had splintered. Fleet Commander Vextar and his allies advocated for withdrawal from Earth, while those loyal to General Kral pushed for even harsher measures to crush human resistance. Officer Krelvan, now leader of the Reform faction among the Zorlaxian military, stood in a secret meeting room beneath the ruins of Chicago. Across from him sat Colonel Julie Hayes, one of the highest-ranking surviving officers of Earth's military. It was the first official meeting between Zorlaxian and human leaders. You understand, Hayes said carefully, that after everything that's happened, trust will be difficult. Krelvan nodded, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. We do not ask for trust, Colonel, only for a chance to end this conflict before more lives are lost on both sides. What exactly are you proposing? Hayes asked. General Kral and his loyalists have established their main base here in Chicago. They refuse the withdrawal orders from our homeworld and plan to continue the war indefinitely. Krelvan spread a map on the table between them. We wish to help you remove them. Hayes studied the alien, looking for signs of deception. Why? Because in 3 years of fighting, humans, many of us, have learned something our empire has forgotten. Freedom is not a luxury to be granted by the powerful. It is the right of all thinking beings. The human colonel was silent for a long moment. My superiors will need proof of your sincerity. We brought this, said a female Zorlaxian beside Krelvan, placing a device on the table. Complete schematics of all our bases on Earth, shield frequencies, patrol routes, everything you need. Hayes picked up the device cautiously. If this is genuine, it could change everything. It is, Krelvan assured her. We have seen enough death. In the hidden command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, the remains of the United Earth Council gathered to hear Colonel Hayes's report. President Maria Rivera, her hair now streaked with gray, listened intently. "You believe this alien faction is sincere?" she asked when Hayes finished. "I do, Madam President. Our intelligence confirms their information is accurate, and they've already helped us liberate 3 smaller cities." Defense Minister Owen studied the schematics displayed on the large screen. "With this information, we could strike directly at Krall's headquarters. End this in one blow." "It would still be costly," Hayes warned. "Krall has surrounded himself with his most loyal troops and the most advanced weapons in their arsenal." "How many casualties?" Rivera asked directly. Hayes took a deep breath. "If we commit all our remaining forces, we're looking at a 30% survival rate at best." A heavy silence fell over the room. "There must be another way," said Dr. Daniels, who had been quietly listening. "Perhaps with more time we could develop better countermeasures." Hayes shook her head. "Time works against us. Krall is gathering his forces for one final push to crush the resistance once and for all. This may be our only chance." "President." Rivera stood slowly. "Then we take it. Send the call. Every resistance cell, every surviving military unit. We end this now." All across the occupied Earth, humans who had been fighting for 3 long years received the coded message, Thermopylae. It was the signal for the final battle. In hidden bases, in underground shelters, in mountain hideouts, they prepared. Some were trained soldiers. Many were ordinary people who had learned to fight when their world was taken from them. All knew what was at stake. Among them was Peter Garcia, now 11 years old. His father Alex watched with a mixture of pride and sadness as his son helped load supplies onto the transport vehicles. "Dad," Peter said, "I want to come with you." Alex knelt to look his son in the eyes. "No, Peter. You stay with the support team. Someone has to be here when we get back." "But what if you don't come back?" Alex hugged his son tightly. "Then you'll keep fighting. That's what humans do." The final battle for Earth began at dawn. Coordinated by Krellvan's rebels, human forces penetrated the outer defenses of Krell's Chicago stronghold. Fighter craft, both human and Zorlaxian, clashed in the skies over the ruined city. Colonel Hayes led the main assault force, 500 men and women making a direct push toward the central command building. They moved through the shattered streets, fighting house by house, block by block. "Push forward," Hayes shouted as enemy fire ripped through their ranks. "We break through or die trying." Beside her, a young soldier named Mike Davis fell, a Zorlaxian energy beam burning through his chest. Another took his place immediately. None retreated. Inside the command center, General Krell watched the battle unfold with growing rage. "Where are our reinforcements?" he demanded. "They're not coming, General," said a communication officer. "The ships from Homeworld have turned back." "Impossible," Krell roared. "The Supreme Leader promised—" "The Supreme Leader is dead," came a voice. From the doorway, Fleet Commander Vextar stood there, flanked by loyal officers. "The High Command has voted. The war is over. Earth will be left to its people." Krall drew his weapon. "Traitor, this planet is ours by right of conquest." "No planet is yours by right, General," Vextar said calmly. "That is what these humans have taught us. And it has cost us too much to learn the lesson." Outside, Hayes and her forces had reached the main entrance of the command building. The fighting was fierce, with losses mounting on both sides. "We can't break through their last defense line," shouted Linda Ortiz, now Hayes' second in command. Hayes looked at the Zorlaxian shield that blocked their path, too strong for their weapons to penetrate. Then she saw a familiar face among their alien allies. "Krellvan, can you lower that shield?" The Zorlaxian officer moved forward. "Not from here. It must be done from inside." Hayes gritted her teeth, seeing her forces being cut down around her. "Then we've failed." "Not yet," Krellvan said. He activated his communication device. "Commander Vextar, it's time." Inside the building, Vextar nodded at the message. With a swift movement, he disabled the shield controls. As the protective barrier fell, Hayes and her forces surged forward into the command center. Krall, seeing his last defense fall, turned his fury on Vextar. You've doomed our empire. No, Vextar replied. I've saved it from becoming something not worth preserving. The fighting was brief but brutal. When it ended, General Krull lay dead, along with his most loyal followers. The command center fell silent except for the sounds of the wounded. Colonel Hayes looked around at the survivors, human and Zorlaxian standing together. It's over, she said simply. 1 month later, Ambassador Susan Wright stood in the rebuilt United Nations chamber in Geneva. Across from her was Krelvan, now the official representative of the Zorlaxian Empire. The last of our military forces will leave your system within the week, Krelvan stated. Earth and all its colonies will be recognized as sovereign and independent. Wright nodded. And the reparations we discussed will be paid in full. We cannot undo the damage we have done, but we can help you rebuild. As they signed the formal peace treaty, Wright allowed herself a small smile. You know, when your ships first appeared, I told Commander Vextar that humans don't surrender. I never imagined I'd be saying thank you for learning that lesson. Krelvan's 4 eyes blinked thoughtfully. The cost was too high, but the lesson will never be forgotten. Not by my people, and certainly not by yours. Outside the chamber, humans were already rebuilding their world. And in schools across Earth, children were learning the story of how humanity had faced its greatest challenge, and by refusing to surrender, had changed not only their own destiny, but that of the stars themselves.